Hello, everybody who's now joining. Just want to let you guys know we are going to get started in about 2 minutes. So just hang tight until then. Alrighty, we ready to get started on our end? Okay, let's go. So hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining our June customer webinar, Flow 101 with AT&T. So of all of our customers and partners, AT&T is by far the most advanced Flow users of ours. So super excited to have them here today. This is a great opportunity for you all to kind of learn from them how they leverage Flow, and then also kind of learn how to get started with Flow as well. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Maggie Splain. I am the team lead for customer marketing. So before we begin, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping items, and then I will turn it over to Fernando and the team to get started. So at the bottom of your screen, there are multiple tools that you can use to kind of optimize your viewing experience. So all of these tools are resizable and movable, so you're welcome to move them around to kind of get the most out of your monitor space. You also can kind of expand your slide area or maximize it, clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please put them through the Q&A. We will be monitoring it throughout the chat, answering as we go for some of them, but if we don't answer it throughout, we will have time at the end to answer all of your questions. And if anything requires kind of follow-up, we will make sure to take note of it, email, follow-up, all of that. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Fernando to introduce himself.
Hi, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining. I'm Fernando Jorge. I'm one of the technical marketing engineers here at Devo. And as Maggie mentioned, today we're going to be talking a little bit about Flow. So let's now our folks from AT&T introduce themselves.
Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and start. I'm Mark Willis. I'm the CSS SOC Operations Manager for the CSS program. Josh?
Josh Copeland. I am the SOC Director with our mother services for AT&T. I will Mark.
All right, Fernando, we'll pass it back to you.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about what is Devo Flow, what do we use it for, how do we get it, how do we build some flows, and see a couple of AT&T use cases. So let's start talking about what is Flow. Flow is Devo's very own correlation engine. With Flow, we can enhance cybersecurity efforts by integrating alert systems to prevent and alert about security breaches. Flow is a tool for data stream processing, so it will help you understand relationships and also to aggregate, normalize, analyze, and enrich event log data. Flow automates data processing in real time and speed up investigation by defining complex workflows as soon as data arrive on the platform. With Flow, you can define different sources to detect and manage threats, errors, alerts, data sharing, and more. So what do I use it for? The Devo Platform allows users to build their alerts based on query data. With Flow, you can define query-based alerts much easier by only using 2 Flow units. And don't worry about the terms. We're going to talk about a little bit in a minute more about, for example, what is a unit. So Flow also allows users to build alerts that can't be defined in Devo. In Flow, the units are scriptable, so there are no limits to the type of conditions that you can define for your alerts. This allows the users to detect complex data patterns in a simple way. By using the available units in Flow, you can join several data streams and correlate the information in different tables to react when the same pattern occurs in other tables. This means that you can boost the potential of your alerts and data injections correlating data from different tables. It also gives you the ability to easily integrate external logic and algorithms to define complex flows. So in summary, Flow will help us correlate and enrich data in real time to prevent and alert about security breaches. So let's go and see the application. Give me a second. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so this is the screen that you see when you land directly into Flow. When you log in, you just need to go into the Flow app here at the bottom. And the screen, it's basically divided in about 4 main portions. At the top, you'll have the toolbar that present you with a wide range of different actions. On the left, you have the units panel. So these are the Flow units. And here we have about 40 or more units. The list of the units available in Flow deployment will depend on your permissions. These units are divided in different categories, in multiple categories. And each of the units, one of the real useful thing about Flow is that each of the units comes with their own documentation. So if you need to know information about the unit, you just hover the mouse over it and you will see more information about it. This is the work area. This is where you're going to be. This is the work canvas. where more of the action takes place. The work area allows the user to create and configure units and the relationship among them. And as soon as you, let's look for one of our own units. As soon as you drop the unit into the work area, you will get like an action menu. So when you click on it, you will see different things, like, for example, information. Here you will see, again, all the documentation related to this unit. You will have a description about the unit and information about the ports. Each unit will have different type of ports. It will be in ports and out ports. And here you will see the information of the input ports and the output ports. What the input ports is, the name and the description, and also about the output ports. You also have addition options. Here, the one to remove it. Here, one to break the connections between the units. You can clone it just by drag and dropping. And also all the login. We're gonna see about this in a little bit. If you double click the unit, you will get into the details about the particular configuration of that unit. In this case, you will have general tabs, columns tab, and from event. So let's see how can we work with Flow. In this case, and as I mentioned before, you can create very simple flows just to get alerts with 1 or 2 units. But let's go ahead and create an alert for a particular situation. So let me go and grab some information that I have here, so I don't need to type all of this. Here you can add some description about what type of this unit is doing. Let's then create a query. This query, basically, it's going to look for the tables that we have in the Devo platform. So let me just paste this code in here. Our system, it's based in the link. So this is the type of language that you're going to use for your query. So here is what I'm telling the system to do. I'm telling it to basically search for status code 404 and to give me this type of information when it reach that count. Let me then go and just set up a date here, a couple of days out. In this particular case, I don't need to fill anything else. So let's apply it. And as you can see here, it says that there's no details about the output port on the output data. But as soon as I save it, oh, I need to change the name, I forgot. Actually, let me move to this one here, so I have it open. So again, the query. And as soon as I save it, because it's already saved, you're gonna see that the fields that I had in my query, the fields that I'm looking for, are gonna show in the output port. If you don't see this information, maybe there's something missing in your query, but this is the information that is gonna be sent out. After that source unit with the information, I added a unit that is called the text formatter. Just search in here so you can see the unit and the information about it. And I call it email template. So I have the email template name, I have the field name. This field name is important because we're going to use it for like a variable value that we're going to use it for the email. So here I created the format that I'm going to use on the email, and also the different variables that I'm getting that I want to show on that email that are coming directly from the previous unit on the output port. And then I'm sending that information, that template, into the email. And we are going to be using this message field, this format field name, as a reference for the email. So when I create the email, when I drag and drop it from my units, I just need to open it, create a subject, and message. In this particular case, we are making reference of this variable that is going to be the message. I then start running the flow. And one thing that you notice in here at the bottom is that I have an event, what we call the event debugger. So when you start running the flow, when you start the process, you're going to start seeing events in here if you select the port to be debugged. So now if I select this one, it's going to be added in here, and automatically it's going to save the flow. You can select here in the debug screen, you can select more than one debug message, and you just press here to see the details about the event. In this particular case, it's telling us that the method is a post, the status code is a photo 4, and if we click the arrow, we're going to see then the message that is going to be sent through email in this particular case. So this event is the one of this particular port that you can see also the information related to the event date, client IP address, method, status code, and the account. The field that is being added here is the message, because it's the field that we added. All the other ones are coming directly from the source. So if you can see here, we have just 5 fields. Here we have 6 fields, and the new field is the message one. So that's how you can build a really basic flow and an alert related to that flow. So now let's move with AT&T to see more advanced flows. We have 2 use cases from them, so let's go there.
All right. Thank you, Fernando, for kind of going through all of that. One of the things to really consider whenever first establishing a flow is to make sure that the name is entirely unified with underscores in place of spaces. That can potentially cause an impact for it to be able to run. And then a second point of that is that your flow will come naturally in an unloaded state. And this means that it's not actually providing the content unless you enable it or you start it. So once you've finished and you got the flow into a workable state that you feel is good for the use case, then make sure to go ahead and click that start button in the upper portion of the command control panel. And that will actually enable it and have the flow loaded. And whenever that happens, then it will proceed to actually perform the function task that you have created for it. So that's just a couple of little items to consider whenever doing flow. Getting into this flow specifically, we have the UDOR botnet, and this is specifically one that's based around a lookup list that we have that has been added to our Devo instance. And this is specifically geared to have detection go across all the customer environments, since we are an MSP domain, and be able to have any of them reference back against this one single flow, as opposed to creating individual query for an alert that then has to be copy and pasted over and over and over again for all the different customer environments or all the different data sources that need to be compared. We're able to encapsulate all of this into one single flow, as opposed to doing that. So it's far more computationally efficient, as well as being more lean and better operations in total, because it compares everything at the start. Now, you may say, well, why can't I just do a synthesis table to have all the data sources? And you can, but again, it comes back to the aspect of, is this computationally efficient, and is this actually going to run well over the long term, as you have to modify that synthesis table for any of the new data sources or anything that may be feeding in. So for us, Flow has very much been the case of being able to do this one time, and then anytime that we have a new lookup list, we can just take our aspect of that Devo Flow query, replace the actual lookup list reference, and then it is, in essence, able to be deployed across any number of lookup lists that we have very quickly, very efficiently, and easily done. And for that aspect, we can actually go ahead and pull the things automatically to make sure that our lookup lists are good. And once we have that, we can kind of expand our threat logic, if it's manually added, as much as needed. So getting into the flow, you'll notice that this is a very simple structure overall, where we have the start being the each 10 minutes. So Fernando, if you could, go ahead and get into it. And can you go ahead and look at the parameters? Yeah, there we go. So you'll notice, very similar to how Fernando had at the start, you give it the basic name. For us, this is going to be in each 10 minutes, and this is an interval segment to be at a 10-minute count. And you can see that we have that time field name, execution time. So can we go ahead and go over to that period tab? All right, so in this portion, this is where this really comes into play. And this is where we define the actual time period that this is supposed to have the event generation. And so this is keeping the flow in a near real-time state, with it being set for 10 minutes, which means that there's very minimal gaps. So it's as close to real-time as you can effectively get for a lot of the operational aspect for actually alerting. So you can see how we have it defined with the milliseconds, and then you can see how you have the other breakdown fields for the exact, aligned, and time zone, so you can actually have a bit more granular control for any of the things that you feel you may need to modify. So Fernando, can we go ahead, close out of this and go to the next? Okay. And for this, you can see that we have interval sample 1, and then this is actually applied with the Groovy language. And then this is really where it's coming down to the fields and what's added, and then what's removed as well. So you can see for this, with all the different fields, you can actually add multiple levels that can help you really filter and get a lot of value out of the different things that are really needed for your flow. So this isn't the only one. Very similar to what Fernando highlighted earlier with the different units, you can kind of drag and drop, play with it as you need, of the different units that are out there and available. So say you need to have a filter, or you need to join two tables. You can easily do that with the filter unit or the join unit, and you're able to take that event generated, drop it in there, and you can actually have whatever functional aspect or control aspect that you need to populate the data. You have that right there. But in this case, for us, we have it with this interval sample, which is really going to be, for us at least in this case, getting that execution time to the get time. And you can see that with the expression field. And then you can see as we go down what the actual expression is, and you can see how that goes back to that 2 equals 60,000, and that again applies back to the milliseconds that we had defined previously in the first module, or the first unit, that then this is giving it a bit of context. Can we go ahead and go over to that fields to remove? And in this one, you can see once we have that 10-minute interval actually defined and it's pulling everything, so it's aggregating all the data, that will then be used for our next unit, which is the query. You can see that we actually have this portion removed. So it's in essence pulling all of the events in to then go ahead and drop that execution time so that it's not just getting bloated, it keeps it very efficient and operationally sound. So let's go ahead and close this one, and we'll get into the query. So for the query, you can see that we've just left this as the default Devo full query 1. And the reason for this is we can specify it for each individual lookup list if we want to. However, we have that defined per the naming standard that we keep for each of the different lookup lists for each of the flows independently. So for this, you can actually see that query, and you can see how you can either drag and drop the fields, or what you can do is you have that little export functions that'll pop it up in a new table. So right now where Fernando's at with the scroll bar, you'll see in the upper right portion, there's that little panel that can pop it out a bit more fully. So if ever needing a bit of a different display and you need the editor, that's where it is. Now, getting into the actual flow itself for the query, it's intended to be as modular as we can make this, specifically so we can add or remove or modify it for any of the lookup lists that we have preloaded within our Devo instance. So for this, you can see where we have this referencing back against the synthesis all events raw, and that's pretty much a compilation of different data sources. But then we can actually also take that and carry it over for each of the customers so that it's treating everything unique and getting them pretty much firing across any of the customers that we have in total. So with this, you can see the where the alert is no alert, and then we have all the different breakdowns for the different fields. And then we get into the actual meat and potatoes of how this is actually structured to fire. And you can see that from my lookup list, udor_botnet. And with that, that is the actual name standard of the lookup list that we had preloaded within our instance. So this is the aspect that is to be modular for our different flows, that we can replace whatever that is the lookup list name after that my.lookup list. We can replace that there, and this will work across pretty much any of the lookup lists that we do have. And then you can see as we go through the actual query how it pulls all the different values and how it actually populates the different fields for actionable use whenever it actually gets to the point of being able to send out for an alert. And you can see that at multiple points there are the lookup list name. You just replace that, and then it's pretty much good to go. So Fernando, can we go ahead and go over to the columns field? You can see with this, we don't actually have any defined here because we define it entirely through that query. However, if you need, you can, instead of doing it with the query, apply the different fields for the columns at this table. And you can see how you can do the addition, and you can then subsequently line everything down, and you can kind of define what's to be done there. So in that, you can see the different types. And that pretty much is an alternate way of doing what we did with the query. And then can you go ahead and do the from event? And you can see, again, from here, we haven't done anything because we, again, defined it per the query. And what we did with the previous ones for the interval and then also with the send. And you can see the start time from, end time to, no real definition there beyond that being the default. So let's go ahead and close this and go to the next. So with this, you can see clean data, and you can again see this being groovy. Go ahead, do the fields, or yeah, field stat. You can see that we don't really have anything there, but whenever we get to the fields to remove, that we have that from and to that you saw as part of that query structure with the previous the different fields that were established. So with that, you can see how this is in essence cleaning up some of that actual extract that will be sent out for an alert. And this is really where it makes it a bit more lean. It's not going to be as noisy or as bulky by able to get those fields kind of limited down a bit. So let's go ahead and close this. And then we have the store example. So for this, you can see how we have the store example and that this is actually going to a table name for the My App Alerts watch list. And so this is pretty much anytime we have this alert fire, it actually gets recorded with this My App Alerts watch list. Now, the intent of this one is kind of to build out a table. So if you need to go back for audit purposes or historical lookups to see what alerts actually fired based off lookup list, you can do that here where we have it configured because it's sending out this table that is populating pretty much all the events that were encapsulated within that 10-minute interval. That is the capture for the alert. This is now generating that record of it so that if you need to go back for a historical audit or review, or you just need to do some type of optimization because an alert may be noisy based off the configurations, you can do a quick and easy check here to say, okay, this is what's firing at what interval, at what rate, how noisy is it, whatever the case may be. And you can do that as an easy export for record for whatever level of reporting purpose that you need. So let's go ahead and close out of this one. And I'll go ahead and open it up to Josh to see if he has any additional comments before we go ahead and move on to the brute force.
Yeah, so one of the big reasons that you do something like this is when you're trying to ingest cyber threat intelligence into your Devo platform. You know, you're going out and you're doing your threat hunting, you're finding, you know, indicators of compromise that are targeted directly to your environment or to your industry. And this provides a very clean and effective mechanism to be able to load that into a lookup list and then get it into a logic environment that you can do the appropriate correlations. So that's kind of like the really big use case for kind of doing these kind of things within. Well, Mark?
Okay. Let's go ahead and go over to that brute force detection. All right, so for this one, you can see it's a little bit more expansive than the previous one. This is one that's moderately complex, but not too complex. With the UDOR botnet, the entire purpose of that is to be modular, so we can add and replace whatever lookup list we need. For this one, it is specifically geared for a specific behavior detection set. So for this, you can see how we have that event generator at the very front that isn't actually attached to anything. Whenever you have something like that, you can actually have a couple of the different units that they have to be able to generate events to kind of do some testing if you need. And you can see how for this one, we have it there so it's able to do the event generation if we need. However, it's not inherently attached, so it actually doesn't interfere or cause duplicates with any of the data that is getting pulled for those the Devo sources that we'll be getting into in just a little bit. So with this, you can see how we have this kind of categorized into two separate fields to start. So for the first unit, you can see how this is actually geared towards the login failed, and then the bottom one is the login succeed. So let's go ahead and get into that fail to see what's actually relational for this. So for this, you can see it's structured entirely around the query at this point still. And you can see how we have it referenced against the win all, and this is specifically to capture any of the data sources that may not be normalized into every single Windows event That way, we're not missing anything. And then we have the simple breakdown for that event ID as a normalized field. And then it's going to actually get that encapsulated with the fields that it's going to be pulling for the event date, workstation account, and the source IP. For this, you can see the time column where we establish the event date, and then we have the event time or the start time being left blank. And this is so that there isn't actually a defined segment, but if you need to go back historically, you can define a start time and an end time, and you can pull this up in a separate report independently if you need. But for us, we leave it blank because this is a real-time operation run that we have. So then we can ensure all data being on to make sure that it covers everything. And then we do not have the inquiry when no more data, because we want this to be functional fully. At no point does this need to end, because we have this for a real-time or as near real-time detection as possible. And then wait on error, it's where if there is any process error or functional error, that it gives it the, I believe, 5,000 second count. And that is, in essence, to give it some time to catch back up if there are any processing or computational resource issues, which we haven't seen at this time. But if there is, you can actually establish that so that you have a bit of leeway for it to finish processing. So let's go ahead, go to the one for the succeeded. And this is going to be pretty much the same thing, and except for the event ID being the 4624, and that is redirecting for the succeed with all the same fields so that it's normalized for any of the units that we're going to be getting into in just a bit. So for both the login failed and the login succeed, we have these sent to a memory unit. And for this is in essence creating a table where it pulls all those events that were identified with the login fail and the login succeed. And this is storing it so that we can actually make it actionable data per the flow context, so that we can actually use it in a workable manner. And we can actually take this for any of the other units that they have available. So say we needed to join based off of say you have several VLANs or subnets that you want to group hosted by, you can go ahead and have that source IP field and say, hey, any of the hosts per this group from memory can be joined with another group, and then you can kind of make it a bit more expansive or modular to what you need specifically for the need of the use case. So in this example, it's not too complex. However, for some of the ones, we have to get extremely granular for some of the customer environments based off stipulations that have been presented. And for that, we can do the memory, have it send out to, say, either a join or a filter or a switch statement or a reduce statement, or get it remapped based off of those units that Devo has made available. And that actually gives you that capacity to really get into some of the more nitty gritty, make it a bit more complex or extremely specific to what customers may need or what is your functional use case for your organization. All right, so for this one, you can see that there is the store, and that's the basic name, and this is a memory unit, and it's in essence taking what sources feed into it, and it's just pretty much setting it up in a table. And for this, you can see the value field being listed as value, pretty much anything that's there, and that this is replace on import. So let's go ahead and look at that input ports. Now, for this input ports, this is really where you get the granular use of the memory unit. And with this, you can see how we have the identified key fields for that source IP, the workstation, and the account. And this is really where it's that normalized data from the login succeed and the login failed for those fields that it was sending to this memory. And this is kind of keynoting it to be able to be used for the next units that we have coming up. But you can see that our primary concern out of this is the account. So let's go ahead and go over to that output ports. All right, so for this output, you can see how we have it identified for the key fields for the keys, and then, basic values for the value field, and then the count for the count field. So nothing is really deviating from a baseline or the defaults. And this is specifically so that it's as easy to use as possible for anyone not familiar with Flow, that they can come in, they can leave those outputs alone, and they can only focus on the inputs so that it's as easily adaptable and usable as possible, so that the inputs can be modified for all those key values or the key fields and then the different values, and then the outputs will do anything that you have configured based off of that, and then you'll be pretty much set for any of the operations that you need to have happen later. So let's go ahead, close out of this one, and we'll go into the next. So for this one, it's actually an event aggregation, and this is in part to clean it up a little bit prior to it actually having the threshold applied. And you can see how this is holding events until 3 or more within a 6-hour window. This is specifically designed so that for a low effort brute force where it's doing 2 attempts and then stopping, and then maybe an hour or 2 later, it does another 2 attempts and then stops, or whatever that interval is, it will pull, it will detect that based off that 6-hour window. And then if there's just a mass number of brute force attempts, that's almost like a DDoS, it'll have that done almost immediately because that'll exceed the 3. But we have this specifically here to aggregate the total number before it sends out, so that if the threshold is met, then we'll have it either send out for email or go to the sync. So for this, you can see the defined size is 3 with purge of 1. So pretty much anything that's 1 or less, or really 2 or less, will get dropped. However, the 3 will send over for the threshold for the functional use. And then you can see we still have those key fields that will be sent over for the threshold as the normalized fields. That will then let it be tracked against for all of that, so none of the data is missing. All right, so let's go ahead and close this one and go to the threshold. And for this, you can see this is a very, very basic threshold check where you're just saying the value size is greater than 3. And this is specifically for that aggregation where if it sends the collected number of events based off those key fields, if there are 3 or more for a full match, then it goes ahead and will send out to the email. And if it's under 3, then it'll go to the sync. So let's go ahead and close this and we'll look at the email. All right, so for the email, this is one where it's the greater than 3 match. And you can see that the basic configurations of this is the username, what that key value is, and then the domain, what that key value is. And then it's pretty much going to send that out to the configured recipients, and you can see how you can have the 2 recipients, the CC, and then a provider configuration if needed. So it's pretty much saying this is 3 or more, send the email. However, for the 2 or less, we have that Devo sync, which will pretty much let us know that there was stuff there, and you can see how we have this for the flow.alert. However, this is not actually taking any action. This is just kind of to encapsulate the total collection that we have seen overall for the entire environment that would be applied based off this entire flow structure. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open it up to Josh again to see if he has anything additional.
I do not.
Okay. So for this, we have the 2 that we have provided here for the UDOR, that's supposed to be modular, and then for the brute force, which is a specific behavior detection set. For these, you can really take any of the units that apply and kind of drag and drop them into whatever flow that you need. You can see how with the brute force, we have multiple sources at the start. You can continue that where you can have, in one of our cases, two that feed into a memory and then another two that feed into a separate memory. And then those two go into a join, which then subsequently goes into an aggregation. So pretty much doubling this and just making it into one singular action in one singular function. So with that, you can really get granular and really leverage Flow to do anything that you need for CTI or to do some type of automated action, be it for, say, a lookup or memory, to be able to send out for reporting purposes or whatever joins, whatever scheduled activity that you may need. There are a number of units there within the Flow module that will really allow you to kind of play around with it, really get into it, and just kind of explore different business use cases that may be present within the organization and leveraging this to achieve those needs. That's really all I had, so I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Fernando.
Okay, thank you. So before we stop with the demonstration, I just want to show you just an example of the email when you receive it. It's going to show you some information related to the fields that we added. So here you can see the event, the IP, the error, that was a 404, and this is basically coming from the email template that we created. So let me stop the cherry. We can go back to the presentation. So how do I get to the Flow environment? You can access Flow via the Flow editor in the Devo application main panel, as I showed you before. Please note that you must have the proper role assigned to you and the permissions to access Flow. If you cannot access Flow, contact your Devo administrator. You can also access Flow directly as a standalone application, going directly into this URL. So now, if you want, you can send questions in the QA chat. Tell us what you would like to see in the future. For more information on Flow, you can go directly into our documentation space. The documentation there, it has a lot more in detail and also examples and use cases that you can use for your Flow. So I'm going to open it to you, Maggie, to see if there are any questions.
Yes. Okay, I have a few questions. So first question I'm seeing is someone asked, when would I use Flow to build an alert versus like a standard alert creation method? So when does it make more sense to use Flow?
So
I'll open it up to anyone to answer.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. Kind of the rule of thumb that we have is that if it would be more than 5 or so in a day, then that's kind of our default of should we consider this for Flow or not. It's really the basis of how often or how large is each of the alerts that would be created via the query, and then is it better served to be operational with Flow. So we default to 5 or more in a day for our Flow.
Okay.
Yeah, and also if you are going to be correlating data, if it's from a single table, I think that you will go then with the Devo Platform alerts besides Flow.
Agreed.
Okay, great. Another question we got, and this might have been in reference to one of the specific use cases from AT&T. Someone said, when I attempt to query these tables, they're referencing I get an error unknown table. my.synthesis dot something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in the second example.
Yeah, that's the reason of that is that's a table that belongs to that domain in particular. So you have to create your own table or use one of the ones that you have. So the one that we have in here, it belongs to the this domain, this demo environment that we are using. So if you log in into your system, you will need to reference to your own tables or create your own. So that's why you're getting that. That user is getting that error message.
Okay. Another question that just came in is, in the second example, what type of testing was the event generator used for?
Okay, so for the event generator with our brute force, it was the capture of a small number of events that were persistent over that 6-hour window, and then a large number of events that were persistent over that 6-hour window. So it was trying to keep what was low activity and get that captured, and then subsequently really ramping up the frequency for the event generator so that it was extremely large, in essence, kind of simulating what would be almost for a DDoS or just a mass scan occurring against an environment, and getting both sides of those so that you wouldn't miss any type of the actual brute force attempt.
Okay. Next question, is it possible to import a flow from an external source?
Yes.
Yes.
As you can see, here in the name, when you import flow, it will add that imported at the end by default. So yes, you can import this from JSON files.
Okay, great.
The important thing to note with that is that the table structures have to be exactly the same. If you try to import a flow via JSON from someone else's Devo instance and your tables are not identical, it will not work.
Right.
Okay, good to know. All right, next question. What is the difference between building a flow in the standalone app versus directly in the Flow app?
There's no difference. It's the same.
Okay. And then last question is, do I need a license for Flow?
No, but you will need to have the permissions from your admin to access it.
Okay, great. I think those are all of our questions. So in that case, we will wrap up. So thank you everybody for joining. This was great. We will be sending out the recording after the fact. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is up here, maggie.splain@devo. And if they are for Mark or Josh specifically, I can make sure to get them to them. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.